Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Everyone Hates the Commissioner. It is just going to be Dan and I tonight, but we got a new one. We're going to kind of throw some new stuff at you. We figure we'll have some mid-season awards, so it'll be fun. We'll touch on the league and maybe some Packers talk, and we'll go through some NFL talk. So, Dan, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. I love talking football with you, but it kind of feels lonely without that third person on here now.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
But so what do you got going on this weekend? Anything fun?
This weekend I'm actually gonna go back up to Berlin and
Oh,
see my buddies from high school. So that'll be nice. And then I just found out one of my friends, his wife is pregnant. So I'm not gonna say names because they haven't released it yet, but I'm very excited about that. Um, I will be the adoptive uncle of that child, so that makes me very happy. So it's gonna be good seeing some friends from home and just relaxing. It was great seeing you this last weekend. You and Monica came to visit, checked out the gym. That was fun, and then grabbed some lunch. So it was great to see you guys.
yeah, that was a good time. It was really nice seeing that gym. I had seen some pictures, but it was awesome seeing it in person. Um, yeah, lunch was really good. That you have to Uncle Julio's.
Yep.
That was amazing. I was telling Monica those tacos that we had were fantastic. I would definitely go back there. But yeah, it was a good little uh kind of half day trip down to the Milwaukee area on Saturday. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Other than the rainstorm that we had in the gym.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was some crazy weather. But so well, I'm sure that you're gonna bring this up, but everybody knew that you and I were playing each other last weekend, and even after all those players on bye, it didn't work out so well for me. I lost by I think less than a point, or maybe just over a point because of Chris Olave on Monday night. That hurt. That hurt pretty bad. So you, I believe, are standing at 6-3, and I'm the opposite. So there's still chance. It's I'm right there with the Packers at 3-6, but there's
Yeah.
still a chance, to sneak in the playoffs. I think you've got locked up, but there's 5 weeks and fantasy football is crazy. Anything can happen.
Yeah. You are sitting in ninth, but you have also scored a lot of points. So
Yes.
that's important because our league is definitely that sixth and maybe even that fifth seed is definitely going to come down to a tiebreaker for points. So your point scored is pretty solid. So if you can sneak out some wins the next 5 weeks, and maybe get up to 7-7 or even 6-8 might, but I think you're probably shooting for that 7-7. I think you're probably going to sneak in there.
So that Fantasy Pros app that I use actually had me projected at 7-7 and sneaking in at
Okay.
the 6th seed. So
Yeah.
and one thing I wanted to add on that is the top five teams in no respective order here, particular order, but top five teams, which is not you, Kai. Sorry to get you
Sorry, Kai.
excited for a second. So it's you, Dan, Aaron, Jake, Emily, Isaac, and
Bo,
oh,
and actually Brian is
Bo.
in. Emily actually fell out.
Oh, so it's Bo and Brian,
Yep.
and then Isaac is six.
Yep.
Okay, so the top five. So Isaac is six, but the top five are the top five scoring teams in the league, which I thought was interesting. But I'm actually number six scoring and we'll knock Isaac out of there. He'll be on in a couple weeks, hopefully. And it'll be fun hearing from him. I don't think you guys know anybody's met him yet, so that'll be fun. Hopefully, he can get on, and he's one of the big shit talkers that I know, so that should be fun. Um, but yeah, I did want to mention while we're talking about the league yet, and I don't know, maybe we can kind of, if you want to kind of rattle through some league talk first before we get into the NFL stuff, but I have to say spot on with the John preseason pick. Okay, when I said that John had the worst team in the league, well, it helped that he completely bailed on pretty much anyone. And then I have an asterisk next to Aaron because as we found out a couple of weeks ago when we were talking to him, his team is completely different from when
Yes.
we did that draft. So,
Yes.
but
Yeah, and it's all about streaks. So obviously, Aaron is probably the hottest team in the league right now.
yep.
Starting out the season, Brian, obviously Jake was pretty streaky. I had a little run. Aaron's hot right now. So now is when you want to get hot. Those last
Yep.
3 or 4 weeks, 5 right now. You want to get your team up and running right now. I think with Dak coming back, I think CD is going to get hot for you,
Mm-hmm.
especially as they're still dealing with some injuries, so they got to throw to somebody. Um, I still think Aaron's team is looking good. Stu, Stu at 3-6, he still has a chance. He's behind you
Yep.
at number 10. You've scored quite a few more points than him, but his team could get hot too. So it really is anybody's race, other than I think John and Kai can probably pack it in. But I think the other 10 teams still have a good shot.
So, I agree. I think Stu is he's one of those sleepers, no pun intended there. But I did want to say that had I and no one would ever blame me for this decision last week, but had I started the New York Jets defense over the high and potent scoring Buffalo Bills instead of starting the Miami defense over Chicago, I would have beat you because they had 3 more points the Jets had 3 more points in the defense. Who would have thought that game?
Let me just remind you and the viewers who I had on bye: Christian
Yes, yes.
McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, and Tony Pollard were all on bye.
Hey,
So let me just remind you of that.
yep. Yeah,
Travis
that would
Kelsey, you and I were talking about it going into Sunday night. And you're like, I think if Kelsey only has an average game of 15, you're like, I think I got you. Luckily, he put up 20 and put me within striking range. And yeah, I beat you by 0.96. And just for those viewers out there, I like to talk a lot of shit to everybody, but I was pretty nice to Nick this week. I kept it pretty quiet. I didn't talk a lot of smack. Come playoff time, I want redemption against Brian and whoever else. Aaron definitely needs some feedback. So
Oh yeah, for sure. And I thought, yeah, I was actually surprised that I didn't get a text from you that night when that Saints Ravens game on Monday night, which was um definitely really it made that more interesting to watch. I like watching football anyways, but it was more interesting. I was watching kind of like what Kai had brought up when he was on. I definitely was watching for those 2 receivers that you had that night, and I'm just because they don't show, they don't on the TV they don't show the receivers down the field. They're just essentially showing the quarterback in the pocket. Well, I'm thinking, all right, well, Olave is down on the right side here, and every time I saw Andy Dalton kind of throw to the left side before it. I already knew him like, okay, good. He's not throwing it there unless
yeah,
he's on some crossing route that you don't see. But
I never will root for people to get hurt. That's not my thing. But when Andy Dalton got smoked really hard, I think it was towards the end of the second or early in the third, I was like, good, he's out. Put Jameis in. Let's let it loose. Because Andy Dalton was just not throwing the ball down the field. You and I were talking about it before we started the podcast. I beat you on a little dump off with what, 3, 4 minutes left in the game. Lamar missed Robinson on at least one, if not 2 touchdowns. But we can get into this later, but I don't understand why Andy Dalton is still starting for the Saints. I know Jameis Winston is not a top 10 quarterback, but I just think he gives you more upside in the passing game. And anything to give Olave a little added boost, I'm all for.
so not only is Andy Dalton probably not the correct decision there at quarterback. Holy shit! And I sent the text to you that night too. Does that beard and that helmet clash? Bad. Oh my god, it's ugly. It's awful. It's like an orange and that gold. It's just like it doesn't work.
It's funny because we have the Knicks notes segments, And a
Yeah.
lot of stuff you bring up on the podcast, I chuckle because you and I, like, we look at the same things. We think pretty much similarly.
Yep.
And as soon as you said it, I was like, I had thought that earlier in the game. So when you said it, I got a good laugh out of that. But
Yep.
Dalton played pretty well. I still think the Saints, for being three, I think they're 3-6 or 2-7.
Yeah. Three and
They're
six.
a much better team because their defense is not bad. They actually
Nope.
played pretty well against Lamar. Um, but just like in fantasy, you just got to get hot.
Yep. So a couple more things on our matchup this last weekend. Uh we both did very, very well in efficiency. You were at 96.6 and I was at 95.1. So that was a very good outing, I'd say. That was as pretty close to as good as it gets. Had we gone 100%, I think you would have been at like 124 and I would have been at 121 or 122 around there, but
Yep.
still that's pretty good. And I did need to, and sorry Kai, again here, not to, I'm going to be bringing you up, but I did want to bring up the battle of the turds that we had this last week. It was both of the 2 and 6 teams, between John and Kai. Not only did they both score under 100 points, they also had the lowest two efficiency percentages, with John at 78.4 and Kai at 78.1%. And John snuck that one by with he got a win with 99.5 points. So I don't know if we'll be able to say that again this year. Maybe at the final in the toilet bowl at the very, very end of the year, something we have a score that low, but probably not again in our regular season.
Yeah, Kai, obviously he's dealt with some injuries and just some weird stuff going on. Obviously with the season. Um, John, he gave up a couple weeks ago, but at least I think John is doing a admirable job of trying to build for the future.
Yeah.
He does have a game plan in place. He picked up some draft picks. He picked up some young guys. So I definitely, John is toast for this year, but I think he's got an okay setup for next year, and really anything can happen in the offseason. Kai's got some good pieces. I just think he's got some guys like Damian Harris that's been hurt, and he had a lot of those Denver Broncos, which
Yep.
we know how that season turned out. So a lot can change over the offseason. We didn't talk about this in our previewing notes, but I was expecting more trades. I was expecting some fireworks at the trade deadline, and I feel like a lot of people just kind of stood pat. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
I know that you and I had some talks that night. I had reached out to Stu, John, and Aaron a little bit the night, and I think Kai on Sunday during the day, but nothing. I was gonna have to give up a player that I'm not really interested in giving up right now. So, but yeah, I was surprised. I thought there would be one on Monday. Um,
Yeah.
being the day of the deadline. I agree 100% with that. But that's okay. I mean, hey, it's not like there was any shortage of trades
Yeah.
the last, well, shit, when did we start this? In March, I think. So we're
Before next week, I'll go back and I'll do some math again, and we'll do total trades and we'll do Stu's trades.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, over the last almost 8 months, I bet you, I mean, we can get we can figure it out, but I'd be willing to bet there's close to 50 trades between everybody in the league.
And
So
I bet you Stu is between 20 and 25.
yeah, he was up there. So yeah, I guess one other thing I wanted to bring up from the league last week is 38-year-old Nick Folk backed up his 21 point outing that Brian had him as his player of the week, and he backed that up with 17 this last week. So that's huge for out of the kicker position.
And that's actually what killed you this week was Evan McPherson had 5 points, but it's because Cincy just kept getting in the end zone.
Yeah, and it was, yep, right, and he was just kicking field goal or extra points, and he did miss a field goal, so that didn't help. That could have, that would have put me over too.
I think that's the only trash talk I sent you was, man, your kicker really sucks
Yeah, well,
with the Bengals, and I was very happy that the Bengals that were scoring were the only Bengals that weren't on your team.
mm-hmm. Yep. Joe Burrow didn't have a bad game by any means. He
No,
had a
no.
normal Joe Burrow game, but Joe Mixon just lit it up. And I think I asked you that day, is this the best fantasy performance you've ever seen? I don't think it is, but it's pretty close. I think Jamal Charles still has that one locked up from when he was way back when he was playing on the Chiefs. So
Yeah, but that is just crazy. I mean, I've seen a lot of 40-point performances. I can't tell you the last time that I actually specifically remember a 50-point performance. Especially, we don't have bonuses. A lot of leagues have,
yeah.
100-yard bonuses or big play bonuses. So to have 55 points without bonuses, that's crazy. And
Yep.
honestly, Joe Mixon, I mean, he was a first round pick. He's had a solid season, but he hasn't had those big games. He's one of those guys that was just ready to pop. And
Yep.
that was a big one. I actually was looking him up though. He's scored more points than this season than I thought. He's just been quietly consistent at that 14, 15, 16 point.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, they're besides those kind of the early offensive struggles that they had, it's not he's still been consistent. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily bad, but it's not like a Nick Chubb or Saquon Barkley numbers, which is fine. I mean, hey, if you're gonna take 15-ish points a game and that's a quiet game for him, I'd take that all day long.
And he's been very active in the pass receiving. So he actually, with that performance, go figure, moved into second for running back ranks. But he has 38 receptions on the season, which I believe is third in the league behind Eckler. Actually, no, maybe fourth, but he's up there. So that's kind of helped him in those games that he hasn't been getting those touchdowns. And conversely, my guy Nick Chubb, that's really what limits Chubb because Chubb is still a top 5 guy and he never catches the ball. So
Yeah,
imagine if they could just sprinkle in 2 or 3 a week just for a little extra, little dabble.
yeah, right. So, do you have anything to add on the league? I guess before we kind of jump into our favorite segment and then into some NFL talk.
I think the big thing for me was just the trade deadline. I was expecting more. I don't think I told you this, but I actually sent a doozy over to M on I think Saturday morning. I know she's a Giants fan. I offered her Saquon for Stephon Diggs heads up.
Oh, she said
And
no, thank you, huh?
she didn't counter it, no note, no nothing. I was like, okay, all right, not interested. Don't get me wrong, like for me, it made sense because I don't have wide receivers and I have so many running backs. And I thought because her running backs need a little bit more help. And I thought that's when you're doing a 1-for-1 trade, I felt like that's about as fair as you're going to get. The value was dead on. Um, I wasn't mad that she didn't take it because Saquon's one of my favorite players in the league. I was just trying to help my team get better, but that was a doozy I didn't want to tell you about. And then you offered me a trade. Jacobs in a first for Kenny Walker. And
Uh-huh.
I like honestly, I think I was getting more value out of that.
You
So it was a
were.
legitimate trade. I just couldn't pull the trigger. And I was actually thinking about you on that. I'm like, man, he could have Kenneth Walker and Damian Pierce. Like, that's a pretty sweet setup for the future with Jamar Chase and CD. So I couldn't do that for you. Sorry.
That's okay. Not a problem, but I guess yeah, I don't really have anything else that really kind of caught my eye. I mean, yeah, I
Do you
guess if we
think,
had
do you think the excitement in the league is going to wear down a little bit now that we don't have the trades, or do you think with the playoffs coming up and people trying to, squeak in those last spots, you think it's still going to be pretty entertaining?
I think it's going to get more I think it's going to get entertaining. I think it's going to get more stressful for people. I mean, I'm already feeling pretty stressed cuz I got up to 3-4 and now I'm on a 2-game skid and that was hoping to kind of where I put up those 189 points. I thought that was like, all right, this is it. This is where I start my team starts to roll, but that has not been the case. But I think maybe besides for a couple of people at the top and a couple of people at the very bottom, I think it's going to start getting a little bit more stressful, kind of seeing where things end up because you don't want to end up down in that toilet bowl because then anything can happen unless you completely tank and you start playing guys that aren't going to score. So
That's also why I was pretty friendly with the shit talk. If you would have been like, playoff hunting right now at 7-1, 6-2, you would have been getting more from me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep. I was it hurt more just the loss, not necessarily against you, but because I mean I know that had your guys been playing, had your running backs been playing, I know it wouldn't have even been close. So I was just trying to take a easy dub and get out of there for the week, but it didn't
Yeah,
happen.
I'll take it.
So why don't we start off with our favorite segment with Obi's picks, and then I won't rush out of that. I'll move on to those next couple of visuals because I know sometimes I get ahead of myself. And then we'll start diving in some let's do our predictions right after that, and then we'll dive into some NFL talk and then our awards.
Yeah, we'll keep it short and sweet for the viewers tonight.
Yeah.
Best part of the week.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 10 of Obi's Picks. He's on a little bit of a run here, winning the last 3 or 4 weeks, so I might start to believe in him a little bit more, and maybe I'll take his advice this week. And talking about this week, we have a divisional matchup between the 2-7 Carolina Panthers and the 4-5 pesky Falcons. It's going to be a divisional game. Probably not too many playoff implications here, even though I believe the Falcons actually are leading their division. So let's see what Obi has to say. So, Obi, come on, buddy. Oh, he is going with the Falcons. It's an interesting pick. I might be with you there, buddy. Here we go.
And
The
just
paw of approval.
for the viewers that haven't met Obi, he looks like the saddest puppy in the world on these videos, but he is the happiest boy. He just makes it look like he is not interested in that treat every week.
That's because when I tell him to sit and I give him the hand like this, he knows to stay there until I tell him otherwise. So like he's that's his serious face. So but yes, he is a very, very happy boy, and he's he's doing a lot better.
Yeah, I forgot to put the win here, but he is up to the 4-5, so he's warming up, and I'm with you. I think the Falcons are probably the pick this week for Obi.
Yep, in our pick'em league, they are 2.5 point favorites. So yeah, I think I might have to go with that one. I think the Panthers. I thought that was pretty crazy that right after they traded CMC, they go out and get a win against Tom Brady right off the. Was that Tom Brady? I think, yeah, and that was pretty awful. But
Yeah.
the Falcons and they're playing tough this year, a lot better than anyone had anticipated. So good for them. I mean, besides the fact that they could have went out and going against David Wood's fandom here, he could have went out and got a real quarterback instead of Marcus Mariota, but that's okay. They're gonna have to wait.
One of my buddies sent me today. I don't know why. Have you heard this? Green Bay offered a first rounder for DJ Moore. Did you know that?
I did hear that. Yes.
I mean, so good for Green Bay. I mean, I think DJ Moore would have been a great fit for us. I think he brings a different dynamic. So I guess Carolina, you can't trade everybody, right? You got to keep some pieces to build around, so it makes sense. But man, that might have been a nice little spark for Green Bay.
Yep, and they also got a minimum of 2 first-round picks offered to them for Brian Burns as well, and they said no to that. So if you're going to build around a guy on defense, he's a pretty good guy to build around. But again, how long do you keep him around on a rebuild before you go and get some value? I mean, 2 first-round picks for a guy that you're at this rate, when you turn down 2 first-round picks on a completely rebuilding team, you kind of at that point have to pay him when his contract is up.
Oh, for sure.
Which I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but they need a lot of help all over on both sides of the football. So I guess I hope they don't like change their mind when he's towards the end of his rookie contract and say, oh, actually, let's see what we can get when he's in his fifth year option, and they don't get nearly as much because for what? I mean, just to struggle for the next year or two. But hey, that's why there's GMs and GM positions, and I'm here in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. I guess that's what I tell myself a lot.
And I think, you and I are in agreement. There's certain positions you got to pay. Pass rush is one of them. So I think they're okay knowing they have to pay him. And I think also GMs have to balance. I think there can be a point where too many picks is actually difficult. You want to have that year to year balance of veterans that are leaving, rookies that are coming in, and balance contracts. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that probably played into it a little bit. I mean, obviously turning down 2 first rounders, I'm with you. Um, but I think he's a really good piece to build around. And obviously DJ Moore is a young guy to build around on the offense. And they're going to have some cap space next year to make some moves. So I'm sure that probably went into the thought process.
Yeah. Hopefully, I guess my point is I just hope that he isn't wasted. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad player. I still think he's going to have a good career. I hope that his talents just aren't wasted in Carolina because they're going to be on a rebuild for a while. But
Yeah.
we shall see. Falcons, like I said, Tyler Algier on my fantasy team. He looked really well. He played really well last week. Except when they got to the goal line, they didn't give him the ball after he ran the ball down the field for them on multiple drives, and then handed off to the 30-year-old Cordell Patterson. You're welcome, Jacob.
I was
So
okay with that. I actually I had just turned on our matchup and saw that he had 5.5 points, and I was like, the game just started, and it was one carry for 55 yards, and then I saw that he didn't get the touchdown, and I was okay with that.
yeah. I was not, but so hey, why don't we do our predictions, and then I think we'll kind of get into our awards because I think we're gonna go down a couple of rabbit holes from that
I agree.
about some NFL talk. So why don't we get our predictions out of the way before we really get out of hand? You know how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. So why don't you start? I'll let, or do you want me to kick off with my player of the week from last week?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you go ahead?
So this guy, he is a former Packer. I think that already gives it away.
Mm,
Kind of came off some stinkers, and you knew he was going to bounce back in a big way. They got up big against Jacksonville and kind of puttered away. But I had Devontae Adams last week, 10 catches, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. The whole offense was going through him, which I was also okay with you having Josh Jacobs, but 36.6 fantasy points on the week. Just a huge day. Devontae can go, for 150 any game. Obviously, my first pick was not Devontae, but you have the obvious this week. If you wouldn't have taken this guy, I would have had to just because of the historic number. But who did you mysterious?
yeah.
Who did you have this week?
Yeah, like you said, it's more obvious, and it's not it's not how I had done it in the past, kind of going off the um I would kind of go off the, you know,
The
I guess
obvious.
obvious a little bit more at the beginning of the year. But yep, I went with Joe Mixon with 211 total yards and 5 touchdowns. It's kind of hard not to go with that guy. He did a hell of a job. He just took probably 20 points away from Joe Burrow there. I didn't like that very much.
I'm curious while we're on it because we haven't talked Mixon a lot. I was never a big fan of Mixon coming out of college or really just overall. He was clearly a first round pick in our league, but he was kind of on not he wasn't on my do not draft list, but I don't think I ever would have taken him in the first round. What are your thoughts for him? Because I know you're a big Bengals fan. Do you think he's a good fit for that team? And like, how do you feel with him being on the Bengals moving forward?
I wasn't entirely high on him coming when he was drafted as a rookie either. But I think he's a really good. I mean, he dealt with some injuries a year or two before they had gotten Joe Burrow. But since Burrow has been on the team, I think he's been a really good addition. I think he can make that you can make a really good trio there with Burrow, Mixon, and Jamar Chase. I think that's really important to have a really a legit number one receiver, a legit number one running back, and a legit quarterback. But I think going forward, especially after I saw what they did with in free agency, trying to bolster that offensive line, I did actually think that he was going to have a really good year. And had I'm not ups. I guess depending on where I was at in the first round, I would have maybe considered it. I can't exactly tell you which pick it was. I've had to have maybe 10, 11.
Yeah, I
But
think so.
um, I probably would have taken him in the second round though if had he been available. Again, it kind of depends at where you're at. But I did think he was going to have a good year. I think that whole offense is going to be kind of flying high for the next few years until they have to start kind of paying people and kind of making a decision on whether who they're going to keep as their number two. Is it going to be Tyler Boyd or is it going to be
Higgins.
Higgins? Yeah, and both good players, but obviously they're going to pay Jamar Chase a lot of money. It might be a record-breaking deal at that point. But so they're going to have to kind of have to be a little stingy with some other positions or other players. But yeah, no, I like Joe Mixon. I think he's a good fit in Cincinnati going forward for the next few years for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. He's a bell cow on a good offense. He catches the ball. It's just some reason he's one of those guys that you just don't love on your fantasy team, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think early second round. I think he went 10 or 11. I'm not positive, but I think early second round. I think you almost have to take him.
Yes.
But I was just curious. But
Yep.
what about the week coming up? And by the way, you've been pretty hot with your player of the week predictions. So this might bode well for a certain player. But um, this upcoming week, I have got my guy, Mr. Saquon Barkley. He's got a great matchup against the Houston Texans. They're coming off a bye week, so he should be rested. The Giants, I still don't know if they're real or not, but they're going to keep giving him the ball because they have zero other weapons. So he has to get the ball. And I just think the matchup against Houston is great. So I've got my guy, Saquon Barkley, this week. Who do you got?
I have it's going to be a little bit of a revenge game here. Stephon Diggs is playing the team that drafted him, the Minnesota Vikings. I wish this game would have been in Minneapolis. It's going to be in Buffalo, but I think Stephon Diggs this is, and I could be wrong, but this is the first time he's facing his old team, and I bet I'd be willing to bet he is going to do everything in his power to not. I mean, he already has a lot of good games. If not every week, he has a good game, but I think he's going to have even a bigger fire under his ass this week to really show him what they gave up. But
Yeah. And I think that injury now, I am in by no means a doctor, but I dealt with the same kind of injury as Josh Allen, probably not to the level of him. But they were talking about that ulnar collateral ligament on the outside of the elbow and the
yeah,
nerve. So I can tell you, it doesn't affect your throwing power or your accuracy really, but it is a very annoying, nagging injury. Um, it's like one of those like repetitive things that it gets swollen really easily. So I don't think Allen's going to miss any playing time because obviously Stephon Diggs. I mean, if Josh Allen is out, that's going to be rough for him and
yeah,
that Bills
that's
offense.
true. Yep.
But I don't think, just personally, having gone through a similar kind of injury, I don't think with Josh Allen, I don't think it's really going to limit him, and I really don't think it's going to um, hold back on throwing downfield. So I'm not too worried about Diggs this week. I think that's a great pick against the Vikings. Could be a shootout, could be a stinker. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think it's going to be a lot of JJ and a lot of Diggs.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be that'll be an interesting game. Could you imagine if they had Diggs, Thielen, and JJ? Oh my God.
You can imagine if we would have drafted JJ.
Yeah, well, we play that game a lot, don't we?
Yeah, my favorite game to play, the what if game.
So we have actually Dan, I don't who did I pick last week to be for this? Do you have that? Remind me.
Um, I don't think because I updated the.
Actually, I have it. I'm sorry.
Do you?
Oh, I picked Cooper Cup.
Yeah, and he had another big game. He had a
Yep.
huge game. So
Yep.
that's I think that's 3 weeks in a row for you that you picked Burrow, you picked McCaffrey. Oh no, sorry, that
No,
was
that
your
was
player of the week.
after. Yeah. Yep.
But you
But
did pick Burrow and he went off.
didn't
Um,
Josh Jacobs, I think, had that big game. I picked him too.
yep,
Oh yeah.
you've been pretty spot on with your picks here.
So
Um,
Emily, you're welcome, Emily.
and speaking of which, coming up, we're going to be talking about our lock and upsets of the week. Both you and the guest both went 2-0 last week.
Oh, that's
So
not gonna help. I still am only up by one then, huh?
yes, but at least
Hmm.
we've got some respectable records now. So
Yeah.
with that being said, you and I are going to disagree on a game this week.
Yep.
So let's talk about my lock and your upset first. How's that?
Okay. Your lock and my upset. Go ahead.
Do
Why
you
don't you start with your lock then?
Okay. So as I pull it up here, my lock, I'm rooting for the underdog here. I just think this is a
Yes.
really bad matchup. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Uh, I want to root for the Jags and Trevor Lawrence. You know, I like the Chiefs more than you do because I like Mahomes. But I just think the Chiefs are going to be a matchup nightmare for the Jags. I don't see the Jags defense really doing much to stop them. So I do think the Jags can score on Kansas City, but I think Kansas City is just going to probably put up 30 to 35, and Jacksonville's not going to be a keep up. So that's my lock of the week is the Chiefs.
Yeah,
You have an upset that I really like. Who is
yeah.
your upset?
Oh, I just want to touch on that. I agree with you with the Jaguars. I'm all on board the Trevor Lawrence train. I think he's got a lot of talent, and like I was telling you before we jumped on there, I saw a clip of him talking some shit to the Raiders linebackers, which I like to see because he has that kind of that. There's some people saying that he doesn't have enough fire and this and that, but I like seeing him talking shit, and I definitely root for Trevor Lawrence as well, and I root for the Jaguars in general just to kind of turn things around down there in South Florida. But my upset, I actually kind of like this one. This could be a really good matchup. I believe the spread was 6.5 or 5.5.
Yep.
But it's the Chargers over the San Francisco 49ers. The believe it or not, like we also that we had talked about before, the Chargers get a rough time in the media too for being really inconsistent, but they're 5-3, so they're only a game back behind Kansas City, and that's a lot of points. I mean, I think for sure they'll cover. They may not. I mean, it'll be a close one, but I could see them kind of. You never know with Justin Herbert, and when he starts slinging it, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So our my lock and your upset actually kind of coincide a little bit there, don't they?
Yes, they do. And it was funny because I don't like a lot of I don't like a lot of upsets this week. Um, I'm probably going to be pretty heavy on the favorites. I don't know about the spreads, but we're just talking outright. So I
Yes.
don't like a lot of the upsets this week. Do I feel good about this pick? No. It's this is a bet with your heart pick and not with your head pick. Um, I just think with the way the Green Bay season is going, and we've showed glimpses, and yes, this is what if, and it didn't happen. We lost. Um, 2 turnovers in the red zone, that just doesn't happen. We were moving the ball. The rookies were looking good. The defense was good. We were more balanced than we've been in a while. Um, so I thought last week was a get right game to get some momentum going. But I also feel this is more reason for Green Bay to kind of play the spoiler for Dallas. And I really do think with being at Lambeau, this could be a trap game for Dallas. I know they're not overlooking it, but this is the game where if Green Bay loses, we can pack it in. So I think it's a win or go home type situation.
That would be very nice, and I love the optimism. I do, but this game, and no, this guy is not known exactly when this is going to happen, but Mike McCarthy has had this on his radar for almost 3 years now since he was hired as the head coach. I bet you he was dying to play the Green Bay Packers, and now he has a really good offense, a high potent offense with CeeDee Lamb, Zeke, Tony Pollard, and now Dak Prescott is fully healthy. A couple solid tight ends. Jake Ferguson looking pretty solid over there as a tight end number 2, Wisconsin boy. UW should say. I don't know where he actually grew up, but this is going to be a game where I think Mike McCarthy is going to step out of his shell, where when he's ahead, that he just kind of wants to run the clock. I think because, as he had said, that his exit out of Green Bay had left a dent. I think he is going to run the fucking score up big time. And I do not think, even if we do score some points and our offense starts to click this week, which I think that could be a possibility, there's no way in hell that we're going to score nearly as many points as them. Because they're going to run the ball all over us because they know that we struggle running the ball. And then again, Dak is a pretty solid quarterback there, and I think this one's going to hurt, and I think Mike McCarthy's going to have the last laugh, unfortunately. But not to mention, we're going to be going up against one of the best defensive players in the league on Sunday afternoon in Micah Parsons, and that's not going to bode well with our offensive line that's been kind of shifting all year long. And Aaron Rodgers, it wouldn't surprise me if he had at least 2 sacks, if not 3 or 4 this week. He's just too good. But anything else on that on this game on Sunday? But I want to talk more about the Packers.
Yeah, I'm all for the talk on the Packers. I think it's he's not one of our top names, but I actually think a big question mark that's going to kind of help determine the outcome of this game is Eric Stokes. If we're without him, it is going to leave us awful thin in the back end there, where we're already a little bit inconsistent. He's not a shutdown guy whatsoever, but he can run with those Dallas receivers. And Devondre Campbell obviously is a little banged up. Sounds like Aaron Jones can be ready to go, unless you've heard anything else.
No, but don't forget about Rashawn Gary is now out for the rest of the year with a torn ACL. That's not going to help things either.
Right. So I just think our D line where it's at right now, I think it's more consistent than the defensive backs. With Jair has been struggling this year. Stokes have been a little inconsistent. Safeties really haven't added much to the table. So I just think if that defensive backfield gets any thinner against that Dallas team, it could get real rough.
Did you see today that the Packers claimed C.J. Abrams from the Raiders, who cut him today?
No, I did not see that.
Or I'm not C.J. Abrams. I'm sorry, Jonathan Abrams.
Jonathan Abrams, yeah.
Yeah, another first-round pick that the Raiders out the door. Man,
oof, gave up that lead. I don't know, man. Again, this is a heart pick. I'm still holding out hope for Green Bay. I mean, I know that we're not contending this year, but man, wouldn't you just love to play spoiler against McCarthy and Dallas coming into Lambeau?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd love it more than anyone. I really would, but I am tired of being disappointed when I pick with my heart, and I don't think that we stand a chance. And even if we were to make the playoffs, I think it'd be a one and done if we were to sneak in, but I don't think we're even going to get there. We're just now at this point, we're just pretty banged up all over on both sides of the football. But hey, in the next couple of weeks, though, we're going to have to decide whether we want a high draft pick or if we're gonna make a push and get another middle of the first round pick. So.
A lot of people have asked me, when do we put in Jordan Love? We got to see what we have. In my opinion, we already know what we have in Jordan Love.
Yes.
I understand what their point is, but I feel like you and I agree on this. We already know what we have in Jordan Love, and I'm pretty sure the front office understands. So I don't think that's really something we have to do. Everyone's like bench Rodgers. Um, I don't think that's the answer. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have the answer right now. So I'm with you. Um, I'm okay if we play Jordan Love a little bit to maybe try to showcase him. If Rodgers gets dinged up a little bit, I definitely think LaFleur and Gutekunst might use that as an excuse to, hey, we want to rest him, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. But I just at this point, I don't know how you can bench the guy
No,
until you're mathematically out of it.
no, I don't even at that point you don't do that. I just don't that I'm already I know we're 9 weeks in the season and I am so sick and tired of hearing about all this Aaron Rodgers talk already. Every time I turn on sports talk, that's all they're talking about. And you have callers calling in about, oh, we need to trade him, cut him, do this, bench him, blah blah. The same thing. See what you have in Jordan Love. So no, you already. Like, I agree. You already know what you have in Jordan Love. You just paid a guy 150 million dollars. He was just a back-to-back MVP. He's still a good player, but this is a very good player. And I wanted to bring this up. At the start of the season, if I had to make a bet on which coach was going to be shit canned at the end of this year, or maybe not even make it to the end of this year, it would be Joe Barry. I thought his head was going to be in a pike at the end of this year. I really did, because they had 7 first rounders on that defense. But it's been the complete and total opposite. I think that Joe Barry has done the best job out of any of the coaching staff that they have right now. And it didn't help that Nathaniel Hackett left, not doing a great job in Denver. Didn't help with Luke Gessie going to Chicago. But I think that that offensive Steinovich, that I think his name is, our offensive line coach, who has been phenomenal for how many years. And I don't blame them for promoting him to offensive coordinator. I think he deserved it, but it clearly was not the right move. It's not the right fit for him. Maybe it is in a different system. It's on a different team. I don't know, but his spot in the Green Bay Packers should still be as offensive line coach, and they should have did something differently there, because and I understand that Matt LaFleur is still calling the plays, but whatever it is, this guy is not, I don't think it's not helping. I think it's making things worse. And Joe Barry, and people can shit talk the Packers defense as much as they want, say, oh, they had a bad game, but how can they have a good game when they're on the field 3/4 of the almost or more than 40 minutes of the game, because we keep going 3-and-out and have it punt 6 times a game. I give all the credit to Joe Barry this year for all the pressure he's been on, the amount of time that defense has been on the field, and all of these injuries, and he's still putting a pretty solid product out there. So I think Matt LaFleur is in the people say that so this, you remember when Mike McCarthy refused to fire Dom Capers? Remember, Dom Capers he had bad year after bad year after bad year, and he didn't let him go until he did, and then he brought in Mike Pettin. Well, from what I gather, and why coaches do that, why they don't fire a DC or an OC, whatever is going on. So in our case, it was a defensive coordinator. That's their line of defense. Okay. That's the guy. If they need, at some point, they need a scapegoat. Okay, you're out. But after you do that, and if you still continue to struggle, guess who's in line next? It's not the next DC, it's the head coach. So that's why they're saying that Joe Barry is going to be safe, or whoever is these guys. Nobody's going to be getting fired in the on the Packers coaching staff. The next one's going to get fired is Matt LaFleur, and it's especially if he doesn't turn it around in the next year.
And I don't want to jump the gun on LaFleur, because our team. No, don't get me wrong. We're not playing well. It's a disappointing season, but we have had a lot of key injuries. We're
Yes.
extremely young. So I am not calling for LaFleur whatsoever. I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of Barry. And I've had my complaints about the defense with all those first and second rounders we have, but I agree with you. When you have an offense that isn't sustaining drives and isn't scoring, you are putting a ton of pressure on the defense.
Yep.
It's no different than an offense when a defense is giving up 40 points a game and the offense you feel like you got to force things because you got to play catch up like we did a couple years ago.
Yes.
It very much coincides. So
Yep.
I agree with you. The defense isn't playing up to their standards either, but the special teams is not making it easy. The offense is not making it easy. And we have been dealing with key injuries. When Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard were out, can you name our top 3 wide receivers?
It would have been I'm sorry, Cobb and Lazard out.
When they were both out, right?
Well, it'd be Dobbs,
Yep.
Toure, and Watson.
How much NFL experience do those 3 wide receivers have?
Coming into this year, none.
0. Our top. Tell me another team in the history of the NFL, other than the first year in the NFL. Tell me when the top 3 wide receivers were rookies.
Yeah, probably
So
never.
yes, Rodgers deserves blame. One of my coworkers, he was texting me. He's like, "Was it a bad play call? Was it a tip?" When he was asking about the interceptions, he's a Bears fan. He was watching the Bears game. I'm like, no. Every interception Rodgers threw was a bad pass. It was a bad decision. It was a bad pass. It wasn't a tip. It wasn't a drop. You cannot throw 2 interceptions in the red zone. And I'm gonna give him a little forgiveness because you're okay to have a bad game when you've played 300 career games. But you know what I still didn't see from Rodgers this week? Any accountability.
He did say that he had some shitty throws after the game. I don't know if he caught that. He did say
Yeah, but he's still not
that.
owning up. I need him to just be like, you know what? I played like shit. I
Yeah.
have never heard Aaron Rodgers ever say that in his life.
So
I mean,
even
he
that,
doesn't play like shit very often, but man, when you're the quarterback, you the quarterback's got to be that guy that's we talked about this last week. He's got to be the guy that fires you up. And not that the locker room doesn't follow Rodgers, but he needs to maybe take a little bit of blame to build some trust and confidence back up with the rest of the team and be like, all right, hey guys, I'm playing like shit. I'm gonna be better. And when I play better, you're gonna join me in playing better. That's what I want to see as a fan. That's what I would do as a quarterback. I had a lot more bad games than Aaron Rodgers has. So that's just my personal. You don't want to. There's nobody to blame right now individually. It's not LaFleur's fault. It's not Rodgers' fault. They're all playing like shit, honestly.
yep. So I agree on interceptions 2 and 3, bad passes, bad decisions. What about that first one?
It still wasn't a good throw.
Well, the thing is though that that's a throw that he has hit like it seems like 100 times. That's whether I think it was a quick play action, and then they have that to get the linebackers to bite, and then you have a quick slant over to Lazard on the middle, and he always just skims it right over the top of those guys' heads. I think that was a little bit of a bad luck and kind of just a another prime example of the bad luck that we're seeing this year, just kind of pile it on, But I mean, that's a throw that he makes countless times, and that's a score, and nobody says anything. Oh, look, he threw it right over his helmet, and usually it's like, whoa, look at what he just did, but now he hit somebody in the helmet. Now it's there. He was getting a lot of slack for that, but. 2 and 3, I agree 100%. That one to Bakhtiari, that was awful play call,
That was a bad play call. First
and
off,
a bad
but
pass. Yes.
if you had thrown it another 4 yards deeper, it's a
Yeah.
touchdown. But
Yep.
what? Oh man, when they called that play, I actually kind of laughed. I'm like, huh, this is just getting embarrassing at that point. I'm not a big gadget play guy. I love offensive creativity. Creativity and gadget is not the same thing.
Yep.
That was a gadget play, and I was not a fan. If it would have worked out, I would have been like, "Oh my god, what a play call!"
Yeah.
Especially with where we were at with the game there. Don't get me wrong, getting down on that goal line is tough. But what have I been saying all year?
Run
Run
the
fucking
football.
ball.
Yeah. Yep. Also, if they are going to do a play like that, and I don't like the play call, and Aaron Rodgers did have a bad throw, but why? Why send the 30-plus-year-old star left tackle who just had 3 major knee surgeries out on a route, man? Come on. Just silly.
Honestly, you get on the goal line, you tighten your stances, which just means shortening up the distance between linemen. You just shorten it up. You put I'm okay. I like Aaron Jones way more than AJ Dillon, but hand him the ball 4 times. I
Yep.
guarantee he's getting in. You just go direct, lead, or ISO. He's getting in one of the four plays.
Yep.
Stop with the bullshit. Stop with the gadgets. Stop with the counters. Just run the ball. And to Detroit's credit, their front seven's playing well.
Yeah, they are.
Another thing is Detroit played very opportunistic. Green Bay has not played opportunistic at all on either side of the ball all year.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep.
good teams find ways to make big plays. Green Bay has not done that.
Yep. Absolutely. And so one last thing I want to add about the Packers, and if you have anything else, you can add it after this. But uh, this is 2 weeks in a row now that I know this is maybe I'm being a little homeboy here, but Christian Watson, man, they are doing a lot of things to try to get the ball in his hands. They threw it to him 3 times in that first quarter before he had another awkward tackle and it got banged up, and they pulled him out because of a concussion. I don't think he actually had a concussion, but they said it was, kind of a close hit to the head, so they pulled him. I I think, and I was telling John this tonight, I think that they know a lot more about him than we do. And I think, and obviously, because the coaching, they see him every day, but I think they know something like that this guy is going to be um, way more than he's shown so far.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing a lot. They're. I mean, it used to be just kind of these end arounds and just kind of get him the ball in his hands just to kind of get the because of his athleticism. But they're they're sending him down the field on some on he's looking like a lot better of a route runner, and he's getting some catches, and then he just gets knocked out right away at the start of the game. So I do think that he is going to be an essential piece to this offense going forward.
He has to be.
Yep.
Obviously, I don't like the soft tissue damage. Hello, Julio Jones. Um,
Yeah.
that guy could have went down as an all-time great. If he could stay on the field.
Yep.
Obviously, we're 9 games into the season, so I'm not saying that. But the soft tissue is a real thing when you're dealing with that. But if you remember on draft day, a lot of the really not the necessarily the TV like shock jock analysts, but the real football analysts were very high on that pick by Green Bay for Watson. So
Yep.
I'm hopeful for the future. He's obviously shown glimpses. So I'm not giving up on anybody. I love Dobbs. I think actually Samari Toure has actually looked pretty good in limited action. It's just awful tough with 3 rookie wide receivers with a
Yep.
struggling team. I mean,
Yep.
it's not going to end well. So
Yep.
I think we're set up again. We've drafted pretty well. We just have to put it all together. And obviously, I think if you have a healthy Lazard and a healthy Cobb and a healthy old line, again, these are a lot of what ifs, but I think the seasons look a little bit different. I just don't think it's as, things have blown up pretty quick. I don't think we're
Right.
probably sitting at 5-4.
Right.
But yeah, they're going to have to come up with some answers really quick. And I think this week is going to tell you a lot about who Green Bay is. If we just pack it in the first quarter and get run out of Lambeau, season's over, man. And
Yeah.
if we play tough, at least I'm not saying it's going to do anything for the season, but at least it shows that we've got potential for the next couple of years.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, should we get into some mid-season awards and we'll wrap this one up?
Yeah, I thought this would be a great idea for us.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple mid-season award articles on ESPN and things like that. So I thought it'd be great for you and I to talk just to kind of mix it up. So you and I are just going to kind of share our personal opinions on some mid-season awards. And I didn't create a graphic this week for it, but at the end of the season, I'll probably create a graphic of what we picked and then at what it ended up being, and then you can get your thoughts with the guest on that. But
Yeah.
let's start with some players of the year, and you got to start with the offense. So, offensive player of the year is always pretty much who is the best non-quarterback. Really, they should just name it that award. But who do you have for offensive player of the year this year?
I have the second leading in yards wise running back in Nick Chubb. He has 841 yards on 149 carries for a 5.6 yards a carry average and 9 touchdowns. He is, not to discredit Derrick Henry, who's leading the league in rushing yards, I think about by a third, over like a 30 more or so. But Nick Chubb is having a hell of a season. So I think I would start with him. What about you?
Well, I love that pick because I have Nick Chubb. And
Yeah,
here's the most interesting stat for Nick Chubb. He has only played 53% of Cleveland's offensive snaps.
that's
That's
absurd.
mind-boggling.
That's absurd.
Now, I like the bell cow, but if I was a coach or a GM in today's NFL, I think I would want to lean more towards one, but you got to have that secondary running back. I know you're in agreement. Kareem Hunt is as good a backup running back as you can get. And I think it really does help keep Chubb fresh.
Yeah,
Like, did you read the report on Tony Pollard? They limit his touches per game and his snaps per game because, and this is where I get a little bit nervous. Now the trade deadline is over, I can say this. I don't know if he's ever going to be that bell cow back. And I don't know if he's built to be like that. I still think he's going to bring a ton of dynamic value. But I think Dallas understands that he's probably not going to be able to do that 80% snap share. But I just thought that stat was crazy. You got guys like Mixon, 72%, Barkley, 84%, Fournette, 72%, and then you've got Nick Chubb at 53%. So I just thought that stat was crazy, but
that's
I,
remarkable.
I like that pick. I love my wide receivers. And I actually drafted this guy and traded him for Nick Chubb. But my offensive player of the year is Tyreek Hill. You could go with a lot of wide receivers, and there's not a lot of bad picks for offensive player of the year. But everybody questioned you're going to Miami. Tua doesn't have the arm Mahomes does. Miami's questionable. You got a new head coach. And man, that guy is just as electric as it gets. Um, he is wide receiver number one right now. Let me just pull up the stats real quick.
I got a
Uh,
season stats.
76
Yeah,
catches, 1,104 yards.
yes,
Only
but the
three touchdowns, but man, 206 fantasy points. The guy is just a video game on the field. And I think him and Jalen Waddle are both fantastic. But I think Tyreek is more of that spark plug for that offense. So that's why Offensive Player of the Year, I think Tyreek is the main cog in that Miami machine.
Yep, and I want to say it. I bet you he has at least double the touchdowns that he has if Tua actually led him, was able to lead him instead of just throwing it as far as he can, and Tyreek has to just come back for the ball. Yeah, if he leads both Waddle and Tyreek, those guys are. I mean, not only is his numbers better, but those wide receivers' numbers would just be stupid. I mean, Tyreek's already number one, but I bet you Waddle will be number two right behind him.
And in defense of that, Jalen Waddle has 6 receiving touchdowns. So it does take a little bit away from Tyreek. Tyreek's not a goal line guy. What I think he's maybe 5'8", 5'9". Yeah, they listed him at 5'10". I don't believe that. He's not that goal line guy. Obviously, he's a home run threat, but I think having Jalen Waddle, who's wide receiver 5 right now in fantasy, definitely limits that because you've got like guys like Diggs and Jefferson and Devontae. They're not really splitting touchdown end zone looks. So,
Yeah,
but 76 catches and 1,100 yards through
9 games.
9 weeks.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'll start out with the defensive player of the year, and then we can ping pong.
Yeah.
Um, I really like your pick for this. I went kind of the obvious route, but I've got Micah Parsons for Dallas. I mean, what can we say that we haven't already said? I think he really is the future of football with the versatility. Um, 15 years ago, you just wanted to go for beef. He is big, but he's not that overpowering guy like the Watts. He is just size, speed, strength, and just raw athleticism combined. And he really has been the main player in a resurgent Dallas defense. So
Yep.
for me, Micah Parsons was a pretty obvious pick here. But who do
Yep.
you have?
I have Matthew Judon in the New England Patriots. He is leading the league by, I think, by two, maybe right around there. with 11 and a half sacks through 9 weeks. And unless they had their bye, I'm not sure. I should have checked into that. But so he's on pace to tie or break the record this year, and he has been on a tear since he's joined the Patriots, since he joined them last year. And not to mention, I love those. He every week he wears those long red sleeves. He sticks out like a sore thumb on that field. So yeah, yeah, he's fun to watch.
Yeah, they've got they're actually the number one fantasy defense right now, and they're second in the league in sacks. Their bye is actually this week,
Okay.
but 32 sacks on the season, which is only one behind Dallas. But obviously Matthew Judon, big part of that. So I like that pick, and he's one of those New England guys. You get the most out of him every week, so I
Yep.
love that pick.
Yeah.
Um, but moving back over to the offense, let's go to offensive rookie of the year. I think Brees Hall was probably a runaway candidate for this before he got hurt, and now I think it's pretty open. But I had a gut feeling you might pick this player. So your guy at running back, you've got Damian Pierce. Why did you take Pierce over Walker and Olave and your other guy, Garrett Wilson?
Because he is sixth in the entire league in rushing yards. Kenneth Walker has had kind of a coming out party since Penny's been hurt, but at the same time, Damian Pierce has been doing this. Besides his kind of splitting carries in the first week, he's kind of been there. He's been their guy down there, and he's not to mention he only has 3 touchdowns, but he is 4.5 yards a carry, even with on 148 attempts. So he's doing a hell of a job in Houston. He's probably one of their few bright spots they have on offense. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in the near future when they kind of bolster that offensive line and maybe go out and get him a star quarterback in the next draft.
Yeah, I love that. They've got a pretty good offensive line. And I think more credit for Pierce is due with playing with a team that doesn't have much of a passing threat.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yep.
outside of Derrick Henry, all the rest of the top running backs, they've got pretty solid passing games to kind of help offset that. Obviously, Tennessee is a different beast. But Damian Pierce right now is kind of a one-man show in Houston.
Yeah.
Houston does not have a lot going for it right now other than him. And he really is going to be the cornerstone for that offensive moving forward. So I think that's a great pick.
Yep. And what about you? Who do you have?
Yeah, I had to go with my guy on this, and I got to watch him on Monday night again. Chris Olave, when you watch him, there's a lot of really good wide receivers. Drake London had a good start to the year. Your guy Garrett Wilson is doing fantastic. I really do feel like Olave just has a little bit of separation from those guys with the route running. In today's NFL, with how much you spread it out and how good these quarterbacks and cornerbacks are getting, route running is a premium. And I think he is by far the best route runner in this class, along with his size and hands. So Chris Olave right now, just amazing. Let me pull up the stats. He has, sorry, I had running backs, 43 catches, 600 yards, but just phenomenal. He's leading the league in air yards. And also remember, he's been playing the vast majority of the season banged up and with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So
Yeah.
just watching him run routes really kind of reminds me of Devontae Adams. So just smooth.
Yeah.
And that's why I drafted him. I definitely, Garrett Wilson's that deep ball guy, Drake London's that big target, but I felt like Chris Olave was the more of the complete package from a route running perspective. That I think give him 2 years, he's going to be in that Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase category.
Very good. So why don't you give us your defensive player or defensive rookie of the year right away?
Yeah, you have my runaway pick for this, but I'm gonna throw out a name that a lot of people might not know. Our viewers are pretty into the NFL, so they probably heard of this. This guy is a rookie, obviously rookie of the year, but he was drafted in the first round, but he wasn't even the first rookie drafted by his team.
Right.
and that is Devin Lloyd for the Jacksonville Jaguars, who had the number one pick, and obviously took Trayvon Walker. But Devin Lloyd has made, in my opinion, more of an impact. And I think he's more of that hybrid player, right? Linebacker, drop, a little bit of coverage, a little bit of pass rush. And he actually fell on draft day. He fell a lot farther than I thought he was gonna.
Yeah.
I was actually hoping Green Bay was gonna be like, oh shit, do we go get this guy now? So I don't remember where he fell to. I want to say in the
I
late teens or early 20s.
No, I actually think it was the late 20s. I thought they
Was it?
traded
Okay.
back in. I thought it was like 30 maybe. I thought they traded back in, and maybe we can double check into that
Yeah, and
later on, but I
I
think they
feel bad
moved
that I didn't have this
back
pulled
into
up.
the first round to get him at the end towards the end. So,
Yeah, you're absolutely percent. Yeah, 27th overall.
yeah.
Could not believe that he fell that much. I think obviously it hurt a little bit coming out of Utah. It's not that, blue blood college, but I was a big fan of his coming out. He looked great on the combine, and Jacksonville, Trayvon Walker, they knew it's gonna take a year or two to see his
Yeah.
potential, but that could be a real nice 1-2 punch for Jacksonville. So that's why I went with Devin Lloyd. But your guy here kind
So
of
that
ripped our Packers a little bit. Who do you got?
Yeah, this is the kind of guy that the Jaguars, who we were just talking about, who maybe with their first round pick, which is probably going to be towards the top 10, this is the kind of guy that they're hope that they should probably try to go and get. And that'll really solidify that defense. And I took a Sauce Gardner. He's got 2 interceptions, which isn't glaring by any means, but halfway through the season, 2 interceptions by a rookie is pretty good. And they're matching him up with everybody's number one. And I think I saw a stat today in man coverage out of all of these really, really good receivers. That's against the Bills, the Dolphins, both of those guys, and Waddle and Hill. There was like 12 of them that were number one guys. He's only given up 4 receptions for under 30 yards in man coverage.
Yeah,
It's incredible. He's doing it. I think as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to run away with this one in actually this year.
yeah.
So doing a hell of a job. Hopefully he doesn't let the ego go too much to his head. He already has a nickname and a sauce named made for him from Buffalo Wild Wings. But I mean, it's not like there isn't another cocky cornerback out in the NFL. But
Right.
he's doing a really good job. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch him grow, and I'm glad that he's in the AFC and we don't have to see him that often.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think out of all the awards right now, this might be the most obvious one.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I remember on draft day, there was a lot of talk when Houston took Stingley at number 3 at
Yeah.
corner, and a lot of people were questioning that. And I think Stingley's been playing pretty well this year. I haven't been able to watch a lot of Texans games, but Sauce, he reminds me a lot of Jalen Ramsey.
Yep.
I hope
They
I hope he keeps his shit together better than Jalen Ramsey, but I see a lot of that swag in him.
Yep. So I think Stingley's still having a pretty solid year, but not as good. But I think that he's struggling with there's a lot of youth on that defense. And one thing I wanted to bring up, and I think I talked to you about this after the Thursday night game, that when the Texans were playing the Eagles, that rookie class that they have is going to be fantastic. You have first round Kenyon Green, the left guard, who they're saying is already going to be one of the best guards in the game. I believe at Texas A&M, I think. And then they went out and got Damian Pierce in the 4th round. So they have 2 offensive rookies and then 2 defensive rookies, one in Stingley Jr., who is going to be good. I think just needs a little more help. And then they have a safety that starts. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. So some good young rookies starting right off the bat down there in Houston. Just a few more pieces, and I think that they're going to be giving a Tennessee a run for their money in the next couple of years.
And they've got John Mechie, the wide receiver out of Bama.
Yep.
And also remember, they've got a lot of draft picks still from
Yes,
that
they do.
Deshaun Watson trade. So I'm with you. Houston, not to overstate it, they've got a lot of work to do. But when you're in rebuild mode, I think they've got a pretty good start to that rebuild. Obviously, they got to figure out if Davis Mills is a guy. I think we're probably in agreement that he's not, and they're probably going to go QB. Um, at least, we talked about that a little bit last week with Brian. But I agree with you. When you're in rebuild mode, they're picking the right guys to build around. Corner, pass rush, offensive line.
Yep. So that GM is doing a really, really good job. And that's going to kind of transition us
Yeah.
into our next awards. But before we get into our favorite GM of the year, let's start with Dan. Who is your coach of the year?
Yeah. I really like your pick. I think this one is pretty wide open because we got a lot of season left, right?
Yep.
But right now, for me, it's got to be Nick Sirianni. Just Philly undefeated. Um, and they're making all the right moves. They're making all the right decisions. Um, I didn't know a lot about Sirianni before he got that job. And I'm not an Eagles fan, but man, watching those games, that team plays hard for him. He's intense. He clearly knows the game, but the decisions and the roster that he's putting together with that GM, I just think right now with that team playing the way they are and kind of running away with the NFC, um, my pick as of right now is Nick Sirianni, but I like your guy, um, and I think he's another great potential. And again, we got a lot of season left, but who is your coach of the year as of week 9?
So again, I brought this up, I think, when David Wood was on, but it pains me to say this, but because I think I might dislike this team more than any in our division is the Vikings rookie head coach and Kevin O'Connell doing a really, really good job there. There's some people thinking that Mike Zimmer was kind of holding those Vikings back, but Kevin O'Connell is doing a fantastic job game planning, especially game planning for Justin Jefferson. And I brought this up that Justin Jefferson is clearly the top 3, 4, 5 wide receiver in the league, and he's still getting him wide open all the time. Not to discredit his abilities because he's clearly, he's a route runner, he's a total package, but he's still finding a way to get him open, even though that other teams know he's one of the best in the league. So I think he's doing a really, really good job in Minnesota.
And I like your point on Zimmer because Minnesota hasn't really changed their roster.
No, no,
Like
no.
it's been pretty much the same roster for the last couple of years. So I like your comment about Mike Zimmer maybe holding them back a little bit.
Yep.
We talked early when Minnesota shredded Green Bay. I said I love how creative that offensive coordinator is with getting Jefferson loose. So I think that's a great pick by you, and he is making the most of a very good roster, but he's making the most out of that team.
Yep.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Going into
So,
GM, who hires those coaches,
yep.
who do you have for GM of the year?
So I have some, well, I really like yours as well, which I think I know which one you're going to do. And if I want to talk about that too, because, but anyways, I'm going with John Schneider and the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, how can you not, uh, I feel like even though this is right now, this is a really, really fast, like change. But that trade that they made, and now again, maybe like Mike Zimmer was holding the Vikings back. I'm starting to think that it was Russell Wilson that was holding the Seahawks back because they trade him away for, I'll remind you, they sent Russ in a 2022 fourth round pick, and I did not look who it was that the pick was that the Broncos took, but the Seahawks got Drew Lock, sorry, Shelby Harris, defensive tackle, Noah Fant, a former first round pick, a 2022 first round pick, which ended up being the 9th pick overall, and they took Charles Cross, who they say that they love him in Seattle at their one of their tackle positions. And then a second last year, didn't look that one. Oh, and a fifth. I'm sorry, I should have looked those guys up right away. But also came up with a 2023 first and second next year. So they not only they were actually going before that trade, they were going into this rookie draft without a first round pick because they had traded for Jamal Adams from the Jets. So the Jets, which is why the Jets had 2 top 10 picks this last draft, but they got a ninth overall pick, so they put him right back in the top 10. Took a guy who's been huge for them, and your boy Kenny Walker. So I think, and then to turn around and with Geno Smith doing a hell of a job, and those guys, they're doing great. They're doing really, really great. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that maybe one of those second round picks that they got from the Broncos, maybe it was Kenneth Walker, or maybe one of their twos.
Yeah.
So
No, I love that pick because I don't think I've heard that name thrown out there, but I really like it. Um, and I also like how you talk about, you talked about the Mike Zimmer holding him back, Russell. Remember the last 2 years when everybody's like, you got to let Russ cook. Clearly, the Seahawks knew something that we didn't, because if you look back now, he was a good quarterback, right? He deserves some credit for what he did, but he also was on a team with probably the best defense in the league for 4 or 5 years,
yep.
and he had Marshawn Lynch, and he always had weapons. Not discrediting Russell at all, but yeah, I think you're onto something there where the GM was like, we don't want to let Russ cook because maybe he can't.
Yep, and I've actually just been saying this. I think Pete Carroll is looking like a lot better of a coach now than he was a couple years ago. Not to say that he wasn't a good coach, because I think he's always been a good coach. But I think teams in the league is starting to realize that I don't think it was Pete Carroll that was the issue there.
And I love his approach to football when he came into the NFL from USC. And everyone's like, you can't coach the same way, which is true. But he's like, best guy plays. I don't give a shit
Yep,
how much money we're playing you. I'm coached. Like, my job is to win games.
yep,
And he's said that all the time. He's like, I'm playing the best player,
yep,
you know?
yep.
And I
He
love that.
doesn't. Yep, doesn't get into the politics, which is
Yeah.
good. So why don't you tell us who your GM of the year would be?
Yeah. Right now, I am with Chris Greer in Miami, and I talked about it last week. I thought Miami is one of the trade deadline winners, with Chubb
Mhm.
and getting some running back depth, but they brought in a head coach in Mike McDonald that a lot of people liked, but he was a wild card. A young guy, a little different. Um, obviously a pretty good proven track record, but first time head coach. But more so, I think the most important decision Chris Greer has done has been being patient with Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not saying he is a top 5 quarterback, but he clearly is a solid quarterback, especially in that offense. He has made huge strides this year. Um, but also, they've got one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league in Teddy Bridgewater. They have depth at just about every position. And then they've drafted well with the Jalen Waddle and all that. And then obviously, probably the best free agent pickup or acquisition offseason trade, Tyreek Hill.
Mhm.
So every decision that guy is making has been the right decision. And that's tough to say in the NFL because fielding a 53-man roster and I don't know how many, practice players and coaches and all that stuff, he's making the right decisions. He's not sacrificing the future for anything. He's getting value in his trades, like with Chubb and things like that. And I just think Miami is one of those teams where if they can keep going at this pace, they're going to be a scary team to play, especially as they're continuing to bolster that defense. So that's why I've got Chris Greer. I think there's a lot of really good candidates out there, but that's who I would be going with right now.
So if you would have asked me, so before the 2021 draft, you remember the big news that happened about a month before the NFL 2021 NFL draft?
Was it
Big
with?
trade that went down.
I'm sure as soon as you say it, it's going to dawn on me. I just keep
Okay,
thinking of like the whole Brady rumor.
so after this move was made, and then the one that he then that this uh then move that the same GM made about an hour later, I said, we're not even through the draft yet. Give this guy the GM of the year job. Okay. So had you said who is the best GM in the last 2-3 years, I would have I agree 100%. It's Chris Greer. So in 2021, in the beginning of April, the Dolphins traded the third overall pick to the 49ers because they wanted Trey Lance for the 12th pick, a third rounder, and first round picks in 2022 and 2023. So I'm like, okay, this guy, I mean, they already had taken Tua, so they didn't need another quarterback at that point. So I'm like, all right, this is genius. He just picked up 2 first round picks and a third rounder for moving back 9 spots so he can go and do and help out Tua if he needs to. About an hour or two later, I think it was the same day. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but he then traded the 12th overall pick and a 2022 first for the 6th overall pick. And do you know who he took with the 6th overall pick?
I was just looking it up because I assumed that's who they took, but Jalen Waddle, yeah.
That's right. They took Jalen Waddle with the 6th overall pick, and then then they remained with the 1 first, and then sent that first round pick from the 2022 because they had another one left over because they did use one to move back up to 6 to take Jalen Waddle, so they still had another one in 2022, and that's the one that they had used to trade for Tyreek Hill. So they sent a first, second, 2 fourths, and a 6, which is a lot, but right now it's looking like the right move. And then they would have had 2 first round picks this year had they not tampered with TB12. And so they lost that one. They lost their own pick, but they still had the 49ers pick, and they used that to get Bradley Chubb in return. So, man, I mean, they did some serious moving there, but some serious trades. But I remember that day that he made that trade, I said, give this guy the GM job already. I don't care if we're a month away from the draft. He already nailed it, I think. So
And
he's done great.
I love that breakdown that you have. That is what makes a good GM. I don't understand why more GMs aren't creative like that.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a ton of stuff going on behind closed doors that we never hear of, and you gotta be able to make that move. Another name is Howie Rosenthal at Philly. You want to talk about trade deadline? I mean, he's been doing it forever, you know, but the moves that guy pulls off every year to get teams better, I don't know why more GMs aren't like, I'm not,
Yeah.
these guys aren't selling the farm. They're just being smart. They're
Yep.
finding value. They're getting the right pieces in place. But I love that breakdown you just gave. I mean,
That
I was
just makes
shocked. I was shocked when San Fran traded up to number 3 and Trey Lance made sense. Everyone's like, it's going to be Mac Jones. And I'm like, Mac Jones is Jimmy G. Why would they're not drafting Mac Jones. I thought it was going to be Justin Fields, but it was either Justin Fields or Trey Lance. It made complete sense with what Shanahan wants to do. And obviously Lance is hurt. It could still work out for them too. But yeah, for
yep.
Miami to move those pieces and to now have Waddle and Hill and Chubb, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, just talking about that trade before that draft just gets me really, really excited for next year's draft already.
I'm trying to, I can't remember, was Tua taken in front
Fifth.
of Herbert so Herbert was 6th then? Okay.
Yep, fifth
Because that was
overall.
the whole who is better. And I could not believe they took him over Justin Herbert. I remember
Yeah.
McShay and Kuiper were arguing about it all day. And I don't remember who had who, but I was all about Herbert. But Tua's looked pretty good, man. I'm not saying he's, the next best thing, but also um, a guy we might talk about later. I was not a fan of Tua in college just because I thought Jalen Hurts was a better quarterback than him at Alabama. Um, so I didn't really understand what was going on there. And then all the hoopla just didn't really sit well with me. And then when he got drafted ahead of Herbert, it just didn't make sense. But
Yeah.
props to Miami for being patient and getting the right pieces in place. And you can't knock the way Tua's been playing.
Yep. Besides, he still can't throw a deep ball. Anyways.
You have Tyreek Hill, just dump that shit off and let him have it.
Yeah. So, all right, that was fun. So why don't we do our comeback player of the year, and I'll let you start, and then we'll jump into some Super Bowl predictions, and then I'll rattle some more. I have some more crazy stats that I have here for you, and then
I love it.
we'll wrap it up.
Uh, I'm gonna go with the real obvious pick, but I talk about him all the time. I talked about him earlier tonight. One of my absolute favorite players in the league, Saquon Barkley. What he has done since coming back from a pretty bad injury and trying to go through it last year when he knew he wasn't 100%. He is looking like the Saquon from his rookie year. The guy is arguably, with Christian McCaffrey, probably the best all-around football player in the league right now, maybe with Micah Parsons. But for me, that's just a real easy pick with Saquon Barkley for comeback player of the year.
Absolutely. I'm gonna go with a guy that not hasn't necessarily been hurt, but he's been on the sidelines a lot in the last 5, 6 years, and came in, and kind of we're going back to the Seahawks here a little bit. But Geno Smith, man, he's just under 2,200 yards, over 73% completion percentage, and 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions with a 107.2 quarterback rating, which I think is only second. Is second in the league. So I think, hey, you got to give that guy some mad props for taking his time learning on the sideline for the last how many years and coming in and doing a really good job.
Yeah, and man, I love this pick. I've never been a Geno hater. I didn't think he was that great, but you remember they thought he could have been the number one overall pick at one point.
Yeah, yeah, he
So all
fell.
the way to the middle of the second or front of the second, and now he's on his fourth team.
Yep.
Played with the Jets for 4 years, Giants, Chargers, and now
Chargers.
Seattle. And he
Yep.
was really signed as a backup for Russell. So I love that pick. Gino has always been like that bet on yourself kind of guy, right?
Yep.
Um, I like it. He's got some swag, and he's really helping that Seattle. Seattle has got to be one of the surprise teams of the league so far this year.
Oh, without a
Um,
doubt.
and he looks great. So I love that pick. It's
Yep.
it's a pick not a lot of people are talking about. I still think Saquon's going to win the award, but Gino deserves a lot of credit.
Yep. All right. So not necessarily MVP type guys that we were just talking about, but or let's go through a couple guys who we do think that's MVP that's going to be in the running for MVP, and I'm going to start with my guy, and I don't necessarily like this, but I feel like I have to do this. But Jalen Hurts doing an incredible job this year. Them getting AJ Brown, I think it helped drastically, and he's coming in with a little over 2,000 yards passing, 68% completion percentage, 12 touchdowns to 2 picks, with a 107.8 quarterback rating, and he's adding in 326 rushing yards with 6 touchdowns. So he's doing a great job, and as long as that team keeps chugging along, keeps winning, if they end up with 1 or 2 losses, I think it's going to be kind of a lock in there that he's going to be MVP. So
And I love that pick. I told you he was one of my top two for this. I don't know why the media is not giving him more credit.
yeah, yep.
Is it just not? Is he just not a sexy name right now? I
I
don't
think
know.
he's just not. Yeah, pretty much. He's not Patrick Mahomes, I guess, and he's not the. Oh, not the. I mean, he makes really really good plays. But yeah, I think that's a good word. Flashy. I think that's probably it.
Yeah. The Eagles are never a team I root for unless they're playing the Cowboys or the Patriots in the Super Bowl. But I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. We just talked about him in college. I thought he was better than Tua. I thought it was very obvious he was better than Tua. Um, and again, Philly has been making those right decisions to get him in. So I love that pick. But speaking of your favorite player in the NFL, I'm going to go the obvious route here and take Patrick Mahomes. I still think this award is wide open. Um, I preseason, I was all over Josh Allen for this with the injury and things like that. I think the biggest thing for Patrick Mahomes is seeing losing Tyreek Hill, losing um, their other wide receivers. You've got Valdez Scantling is new. Juju Smith Schuster is new. They had questions at offensive line, questions at running back. And I just think the guy just continues to play. I know he's not your favorite player, but when you talk about a guy that just makes a team go, he makes some key plays. He makes some key runs for a non-running quarterback, and I think he just adds that flair that not a lot of other players could do. So
Yep.
it's not a very sexy pick. It's kind of a boring pick, but I think Mahomes is definitely in the question. But I think this award is going to be won in the next probably 4 to 6 weeks. I think it's wide open. If
Hmm.
Philly starts losing a couple games, I think Hurts is gonna probably fall out of that conversation. And if Buffalo gets hot, like we know they can, Josh Allen could still win this award very easily.
I I'm gonna I do think the Eagles are gonna lose. They're 8-0 now, so that means they have 9 games to go. I could see them losing 4 games the rest of this year. They haven't really played anybody that sorry. They haven't played really anybody. They've either played teams that are banged up or rebuilding teams. The only team that you can legit team that they've beat this year is the Minnesota Vikings, and they barely beat the
Dallas, they beat
Lions.
Dallas.
But Cooper Rush was their quarterback.
That's true.
So,
Fair.
um, yeah, I can see them kind of falling. I still think they may end up as the number one seed in the NFC. But I don't see them running the table. I could see closer to 4 losses by when it's all said and done. So, but
Yeah,
anyways, that leads.
you want to talk about schedule though? Like you just said, not difficult. NFC North, right?
Yeah,
Um, pick Pittsburgh, Houston. They still have Washington, Indy, Green Bay, Tennessee, Chicago. Like, yeah, they don't
yeah.
have a tough schedule.
No, they don't. They have a pretty easy walk to the playoffs. But why don't we get into Super Bowl predictions right away
Ooh,
then?
yes.
And I like I said, they haven't played anybody, and that's not going to build the adversity, I think, in when they need it in the playoffs. So I don't see them being in the big game. I actually see it's them. I think it's going to be at this point right now, Buffalo and Dallas. So I think we kind of touched on Dallas before there when we were talking about them playing the Packers this week, but Buffalo by then, Josh Allen should be plenty healthy in that high-powered offense as long as those receivers stay healthy. Man, that'll be a fun one, and I think Josh Allen's going to walk out of that game as MVP.
I love that. The Bills versus the Packers has been my preseason Super Bowl pick the last 2 years. I think we're pretty confident in knowing one of those teams is probably not going to get there. Um, wouldn't the sports world just love to see the Bills win a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think
You
so.
know? But I remember rooting for the Cubs growing up. Obviously, I'm a Brewers fan first, but rooting for the Cubs because they're always just the lovable losers. And then everyone was rooting for them. And then once they won, everyone was like, screw the Cubs.
Yep.
So I almost, it sounds so bad because just a sports fan and I'm a Bills fan. I'm a Josh Allen fan. You ever seen the 30 for 30, the Four Falls of Buffalo?
Absolutely, I have.
Love it. It's one of my
Yep.
favorite 30 for 30s. Don't you almost wish the Bills don't win so the world can keep rooting for them?
I
Isn't
don't
that,
know
isn't
about
that a
that.
weird way to look at it?
Yeah, it is.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I would love them to win. I'm a big
Yeah,
Josh Allen fan. I've got two completely different teams, but that's just because I just can't ever say Cowboys in the Super Bowl. Um, it hurts me. I've got you're gonna love this Chiefs over Philadelphia Eagles. I know that's like the last thing you wanted to hear, but I just think with Josh Allen's injury right now and the AFC, the AFC is definitely stronger, but I don't think there's any team that's really separating themselves right now. The Ravens are not as consistent as they have been. The Chargers aren't really living up to expectations. The Bengals, I don't want to say last year was a fluke, but I don't think they're at that level yet. So I definitely think it's Bills or KC easily. It's one of those two
hmm
teams. But I just think KC right now has a little bit more. And I also just have Philly because I don't know who really can beat them right now. I do think the Cowboys have an opportunity. I do think the Vikings could beat Philly. Um, but right now, I just think Philly is the best team in the NFC. But I think if those two teams match up in the Super Bowl, I'm going to go with the team that's been there and it's done it, and with a little bit more. And that's why I would take KC.
absolutely. And I would assume that number 15 is going to be walking out with that extra trophy.
I would have to go with him. I think Kelsey is a monster, but the cool thing is out of all those teams, I think the Cowboys are probably the team that has to rely the least on one player. You know, the
Hmm.
Bills go as Josh Allen goes, the Chiefs go as Mahomes goes. Philly's well rounded, but I think if Hurts gets hurt or isn't playing well, they're in trouble. I think the Cowboys are the most well rounded team in the NFL right now on both sides of the
Hmm.
ball: running, passing, run defense, pass defense, special teams. McCarthy's been there. He's won the big game. You've got to give a lot of credit for that. And if they go to the Super Bowl, I want a coach that's been there, and I think that's very undervalued. Um, so I like your pick. I'm still going with whoever wins between KC and Buffalo. I think is going to win the Super Bowl.
Probably a safe bet.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
a
So
boring pick, but
hey, that's all right, man. We're trying to be correct on these predictions. We're not trying to have a hot take right now.
right.
Hey, but I want to throw a couple more stats at you before we
Yes,
wrap it up. But so we were talking about quarterbacks, especially in the MVP, and um, this guy has been a multi MVP. But would you believe that Tom Brady, at 45 years old and all of the shit that he's been dealing with this year, is still second in the league in passing yards behind only Patrick Mahomes?
that's
With
crazy.
Yes. He only has 10 touchdowns, but he only has one interception as well. So he's not throwing a ton of touchdowns, but he's moving the football. Number 3 in the passing yards in the league is right behind Tom Brady, and that's my guy Joe Burrow, who has 18 touchdowns with 6 interceptions and 70% completion percentage with a 102.6 rating, but he's leading the league by a long shot by being sacked 30 times already this year. It's all that money they spent and we've talked about this in the past. All that money we spent on that offensive line, it's it hasn't really worked out like they thought. But I can only imagine what Joe Burrow's numbers would be if he only had half of those sacks and he had just a little bit more time out there. That's incredible. Good for him. That guy's gonna be a baller for a long time. And the third thing that blew my mind when I saw this. Do you know who is tied for third in receptions in the entire league?
In receptions,
Yep. Well, he's third, but he's tied. But this is somebody that may not come to your mind. That's why I was like, damn, I gotta bring this up.
I mean, if it's a running back, it's Eckler.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is. Austin
I know
Eckler is
he's got
tied in the league
62,
with 60.
60.
60 catches. That's incredible. I mean, being with all that talent at the wide receiver position in the whole league, a running back has 60 receptions for third in the league.
Well, you remember McCaffrey? Did he have back-to-back 100 reception years?
I think we'll have
Man,
to check into that, but yeah, I think he
here,
was up there.
while I look into that, when you were talking about Tom Brady, 398 pass attempts through 9 games, which is a 44 passes per game.
Hey,
Anything, go ahead.
Did you see Patrick Mahomes threw the ball 63 times last week?
Yeah, I texted you that in the morning.
Oh, yeah, what the
Oh my
fuck?
God. But if anything, like Tom Brady's arm is going to fall off. I
Yeah,
mean, 44 times a game, it's crazy.
absolutely.
Uh, Christian McCaffrey history, receptions. Yeah, 116 in 2019, followed before in 2018, 107. So 223 receptions for a running back for just shy of 1,900 yards as a running back.
That's incredible. Good for those guys.
Yeah,
So,
crazy.
well, Dan, do you have anything else to add before we wrap this one up? This was fun. I'm glad we did this. I'm glad we did this kind of a word thing, kind of like I'm glad we did that redraft. That was another fun thing. So
Yeah.
we're bringing a lot to the table. We're changing up on the old EHTC, and it's been a good time. So, do you have
Yeah.
any last thoughts?
No, I'm just excited that we've got a couple more faces coming on the next few weeks. I didn't plan on going this long tonight, but we know how it is. It's not
Yep.
our longest, but it's fun. Hopefully the viewers, hopefully you're having fun out there. I hope everyone's still enjoying the league, whether you're in it or not. Thank you for dealing with all the trash talk. I apologize that none of you really knew me before this year, and I have to win your league the first year, so please don't take it personal. But it's just so much fun every week. And please, dear baby Jesus, give me an upset in Lambeau this week.
Yes. Hey, I'm still rooting for it, even though I don't think it's gonna happen. I'm still gonna be pulling for him. And I want to let everybody know that this episode was brought to you by Basil Hayden's. And
I was
don't ever
just
forget
about to,
that.
I was just about to say we didn't talk about Nicholas. You in our matchup, you lost a bottle bet, so I will be expecting that bottle of Basil Hayden
Oh, that's right.
um, by season's end.
Oh
So
God,
thank you.
I
Please come
forgot
again.
all about that. But no problem, no worries. Hopefully, I'll be getting cases of it, and I can toss it down your way. But all right, well, hey, it's been fun. Can't wait till next time. Thanks for doing this tonight, Dan. It's been a good time.
Highlight of the week. Go Pack, go.
Absolutely.